is spooky season, and I wanted to talk to you about the spookiest thing I could think of, which is fallacies. Fallacies are terrifying. Logical fallacies are, according to the dictionary, mistaken beliefs, especially based on unsound arguments, or a failure in reasoning which renders an argument invalid, which is not entirely true depending on how you look at it. But today I wanted to use a very nifty site called Your Logical Fallacy Is to talk about that with you. Because, why not? It's funny to me. So, today I'm going to be going over a list of 24 different logical fallacies. And we're going to see where they go. They're fun to me. I like logical fallacies. I think they're really fun. And I hope you'll enjoy. And also, I figured that, logical fallacies, of all things, are probably one of the most entertaining but easy to fall asleep to subjects because, they're not that deep. It's not like I'm going to be telling you a story. It's not like I'm giving you an update on my life. It's not like I'm, doing something really important. I'm just going to be talking to you about this fun idea, and we're going to go from there. And if you do fall asleep to this, which I'm hoping you do, that's great. If you don't, well, that's okay. And if you're just here to relax and listen to my voice, that is also awesome. But, I wanted to do something that, because I always have a hard time falling asleep to, someone telling a story, because I want to hear the end of it. I thought doing something like this would be great, because it's not, it's not that deep. You don't have to listen to it. And also, all of this information will be found on yourlogicalfallacyis.com. So, if you want to go look there and read all of this, instead of listening to me do it, you can check it out. That's, Your Logical Fallacy Is, Fallacy, for fallacy, for people who didn't know how to spell it, because I personally am, chronically unable to spell stuff. So yeah. Also, I feel like I have to, put up a disclaimer. This is not sponsored, obviously. I just wanted to point it out to you guys so you could find it. That being said, here it is. All of the fallacies in order from, top left to bottom right. Number 1, we got the straw man fallacies, which is you misrepresent someone's argument to make it easier to attack by exaggerating, misrepresenting, or just completely fabricating someone's argument. It's much easier to present your own position as being reasonable. But this kind of dishonesty serves to undermine honest, rational debate. So, for example, you might say that, you think that we should have more elevators and wheelchair ramps in our buildings to make them more accessible to people who can't take stairs. And someone could use a straw man fallacy against you and say something like, so you want to abolish stairs, which isn't what you said at all. You don't necessarily want stairs to disappear. you simply want to add other options for people who can't take stairs. But the strawman fallacy makes it seem as though you want to abolish stairs, which will affect how they can attack your argument. Next on the list, number 2. I should not number these because, like, around number 10, I'll completely forget and I'll be like, did we do number 16 already? But next up is false cause. You presumed that a real or perceived relation between things means that the other, one is the cause of the other. This is correlation versus causation, basically. Many people confuse correlation, things happening together or in sequence, for causation. I don't know why I said that, because it's literally right here on the text. Many people confuse correlation, things happening together or in sequence, for causation. That one thing actually causes the other to happen. Sometimes correlation is coincidental, or it may be attributable to a common cause. So, for example, you might say that, well, every time I go to the park, it rains. Therefore, me going to the park changes the weather. Or, you might say, like, every time that, it rains, I smell a certain smell in the air. Therefore, the rain also carries that smell on it, which, while not entirely false, is not entirely true. The cause is actually the smell of the ground getting wet. So you're actually smelling the wet ground, if I recall correctly, at least. I could be wrong on that. So yeah, that is false cause. Basically, because something happened and something else happened, they are therefore connected. Appeal to emotion is next, and it is one you've probably heard 1,000 times. You attempted to manipulate an emotional response in place of a valid or compelling argument. Appeals to emotion include appeals to fear, envy, hatred, pity, pride, and more. It's important to note that sometimes a logical, coherent argument may inspire emotion or have an emotional aspect, but the problem in fallacy occurs when emotion is used instead of a logical argument, or to obscure the fact that no compelling, rational reason exists for one's position. Everyone, bar sociopaths, is affected by emotion, and so appeals to emotion are a very common and effective argument tactic, but they're ultimately flawed, dishonest, and tend to make one's opponents justifiably emotional. So basically what they're saying here is that appeal to emotion might be something along the lines of one of your neighbors visiting you and telling you that your next door neighbor on the other side kicks puppies, and you would never want to have him watch your dogs because he kicks puppies and is a horrible person, and if he ever sees your dog, he will run up to it and punt it like a football. This is an appeal to emotion because they didn't give you a rational reason why they think that. They didn't say, like, oh, he publicly admitted to it, or he was convicted of kicking dogs. They didn't give a reasoning for it. They just said it. And they said it in order to scare you. Now, there's a difference between that and, for example, someone saying, hey, let's plant trees because trees are needed for the environment, and we're cutting down a lot of trees, and if we cut down all the trees, that'll be bad. The reason why that's not a fallacy, even though it may make you feel scared or angry or sad, is because that presents facts with it. They could bring up deforestation facts. They could bring up facts about trees. They could bring up the state of the environment and information on that. And as long as they have actual data to back up their claims, that's not a fallacy because it has logic with it. Most fallacies are fallacies because they substitute logic with something else. Next up, we have the fallacy. Basically, this is you presumed that a claim has been poorly argued or a fallacy has been made, and therefore the claim itself must be wrong. It is entirely possible to make a claim that is false, yet argue with logical coherency for that claim, just as it is possible to make a claim that is true and justify it with various fallacies and poor arguments. So basically what this is saying is that not every argument that seems logical is true, and not every argument that has a fallacy in it is false. So for example, taking the claim from before about appeals to emotion, your neighbor might come in and tell you, like, hey, I have this picture of your other neighbor, kicking a dog. And, he's actively said that he's been banned from watching dogs in every neighborhood he's lived in before. Therefore, you shouldn't hire him as a dog sitter because he's a puppy kicker. This is a terrible example, I apologize. Well, that may have been built up with logic. They may have, facts and data to present. That doesn't necessarily mean your neighbor actually kicks puppies. There could be very good reasons, aside from that those two things could be true. Or, moreover, that data could be false and presented as logic and reasoning because you have no way to prove otherwise. Similarly, talking about the environment, if someone says, we're all going to die if we don't fix the environment. We need to fix it now. We need to do, plant trees, remove litter, only renewable energy. They may not back it up with facts or reasoning, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's false. So that's the fallacy. Basically, if there's not a fallacy, it's definitely true. If there is a fallacy, it's definitely false. That is the fallacy. Next, one of my personal favorites, because of how silly it can get, is the slippery slope. You said that if we allow A to happen, then Z will eventually happen too. Therefore, A should not happen. The problem with this reasoning is that it avoids engaging with the issue at hand and instead shifts attention to extreme hypotheticals. Because no proof is presented to show that such extreme hypotheticals will in fact occur, this fallacy has the form of an appeal to emotion fallacy by leveraging fear. In effect, the argument at hand is unfairly tainted by unsubstantial conjecture. So basically, in this fallacy, we're saying that if we allow, someone to take an inch, they'll take a mile, basically. For example, something I came up with a while back to explain it was, if we lower the price on cabbages, then people who sell cabbages will get more money for it because more people will buy it. And if they have more money, they will have more power. And as they amass that power from their cabbage empires, they will eventually become the reigning dictators over all of the lands, because of the fact that they will have built up power and money from us buying cabbages. Now, the reason this is a fallacy is because I didn't back it up with anything. If I could back it up with something, the cabbage farmer in question that I'm speaking about has been known to make schemes like this before. where he makes a scheme where he gets a lot of money, which, here's my data showing that if we lower the price of cabbage, he will make a lot of money. And then he takes that money and he oftentimes uses it for world domination. A very interesting fellow, to be sure. Cabbage farmer who wants world domination. But if I have data to back it up, I can prove that it's a possibility. It's not a fallacy. However, if I don't have data, then, as mentioned, it falls under an emotional fallacy, and therefore it is a fallacy. Next up, we have ad hominem, something that you've probably experienced more than once. You attacked your opponent's character or personal traits in an attempt to undermine their argument. Ad hominem attacks can take the form of overtly attacking someone, or more subtly casting doubt on that character or personal attributes as a way to discredit their argument. The result of an ad hominem attack can be to undermine someone's case without actually having to engage with it. For example, someone might say that, we should protect endangered species, which is a reasonable thing to argue. And someone can come back and state something along the lines of, well, I'm not sure that we should believe you. After all, you are in your late 50s, and we all know that the older you get, the less credible you could possibly be. Also, you publish books, so why would you know about this? And, you're unhygienic. None of those aspects necessarily make the person's argument less trustworthy. If we were to say something like, well, you just want to protect endangered species because you benefit from that somehow. If this person is a conservationist who earns big bucks for bringing species back from the brink of extinction, then maybe, we should consider asking other people who don't necessarily directly benefit from it. But just stating that someone's old and smelly and weird and has a strange way of looking at people isn't a worthy argument. In a similar branch is tu quoque. You avoided having to engage with criticism by turning it back on the accuser. You answered criticism with criticism. Oh, I pronounced it wrong. My apologies. Pronounced tu quoque. So it's tu quoque. Literally translating as you too. This fallacy is also known as the appeal to hypocrisy. It is commonly employed as an effective red herring because it takes the heat off of someone having to defend their argument and instead shifts the focus back onto the person making the criticism. So, for example, if, let's say, your friend is in need of working out, let's say for some sort of job that they're doing, they need to be able to lift a certain amount regularly. So they need to work out and strengthen their arm muscles so they can lift up these heavy objects that they're working with. But they aren't doing it for whatever reason, and you suggest, hey, you should start working out your arm muscles some more. Do that more regularly, build up that strength. They may use the tu quoque fallacy and state something akin to, well, I'll do it when you start working out. Or, who are you to tell me to do that if you don't already know how to lift that much? Like, if you can't lift that as much as I have to, why are you telling me that I should be doing this work? It's a bit like the fallacy in a sense, because it's stating that, well, because you aren't an expert or you haven't already achieved something, therefore I shouldn't have to achieve it either. And in the fallacy example that's mentioned on yourlogicalfallacyis.com, it even mentions that someone identifies someone else committed a logical fallacy, but instead of addressing that fallacy and the substance of her claim, the person instead accused the first person of committing a fallacy early in the conversation. It's basically saying, doesn't matter if I did it, because you did it too. Or it doesn't matter if I didn't do it, because you didn't do it either. Next up, something that, again, I'm pretty sure we've probably all heard once or twice, because fallacies are very common. Personal incredulity. Because you found something difficult to understand or unaware of how it works, you made it out like it's probably not true. Complex subjects like biological evolution through natural selection require some amount of understanding before one is able to make an informed judgment about the subject at hand. This fallacy is usually used in place of that understanding. So, something that this might fall under is, as I've personally experienced, if you're talking to, say, your parent about something, and you bring up some new science that came about stating, let's say, that goldfish are as intelligent as humans. If they don't understand that, they might say, well, that seems unlikely, that seems implausible. Why would anyone think that a goldfish is as smart as a human? They don't talk. They don't walk on two legs or have opposable thumbs. They can't be as smart as humans. That's silly. It's not giving a logical basis as to why this couldn't be the case. It's simply saying that, simply put, there's no logical reasoning that they can find as to why this would be the case. Therefore, it can't be the case. Next up is special pleading. I've also heard it called the goalpost fallacy for reasons you'll understand in a second. You moved the goalposts or made up an exception when your claim was shown to be false. Humans are funny creatures and have a foolish aversion to being wrong. Rather than appreciate the benefits of being able to change one's mind through a better understanding, many will invent ways to cling to old beliefs. One of the most common ways that people do this is to post-rationalize a reason why what they thought to be true must remain to be true. It is usually very easy to find reason to believe something that suits us, and it requires integrity and genuine honesty with oneself to examine one's own beliefs and motivations without falling into the trap of justifying our existing ways of seeing ourselves and the world around us. So, an example I saw brought up once was that if I were to say, I'm a ghost, and I can phase through walls when I want to, and you were to say, no, you're not a ghost. You can't phase through walls. If you do, go ahead and prove it. And I were to respond with something akin to, well, I can't do it when other people are looking. I've officially moved the goalposts. Rather than re-examining my original statement, perhaps realizing that, in fact, I'm not a ghost, I simply said, well, there's another reason why I can still do it, just not in a way that can prove it to you. Or, as an example, one might say that in a particularly, perhaps silly version, when Pluto was originally decided not to be a planet, I'm sure many people simply said something akin to, but it's always been a planet, therefore it needs to remain a planet. The reason why it was changed from being a planet to not being a planet was because we found other similar structures in space like it. So we would have to classify all of them as planets as well, which simply put, we didn't want to do. So we decided that Pluto would therefore not be a planet because we realized that it was far less unique than we thought. It wasn't a large mass unlike anything else. It was simply another rock floating in space. But people moved the goalposts and said, well, it may not fit under the category of planets anymore, but it's always been a planet, therefore I must still be right. Alright, next up, we have the loaded question. You asked a question that had a presumption built into it so that it couldn't be answered without appearing guilty. Loaded question fallacies are particularly effective at derailing rational debates because of their inflammatory nature. The recipient of the loaded question is compelled to defend themselves and may appear flustered or on the back foot. For example, you may ask someone something akin to, so, are you still having trouble with eating out all the time? Eating fast food or eating takeout. This implies a particular guilt in that the person already had an issue with eating takeout. Because you're not saying, are you struggling with it? You're saying, are you still struggling with it? It therefore puts the statement in their minds and in the minds of those who are listening in on the conversation that this is something they have struggled with in the past, which means they therefore have to defend themselves from that statement if they want to. You also might say something akin to, when did you stop vaping? Even if someone never did start vaping, that implies that they have. And they therefore have to defend themselves and say, well, I never was. Or, if they perhaps tried it once and then never again, saying, when did you stop, implies they did it for longer than just one time. And they have to say, well, it was just one time that I tried it and I didn't do it ever again. Which makes them look guilty, frankly. And next up, we have burden of proof. You said that the burden of proof lies not with the person making the claim, but with someone else to disprove. It is essentially the guilty until proven innocent, or innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof lies with someone who is making a claim and is not upon anyone else to disprove. The inability or disinclination to disprove a claim does not render that claim valid, nor give it any credence whatsoever. However, it is important to note that we can never be certain of anything, and so we must assign value to any claim based on the available evidence, and to dismiss something on the basis that it hasn't been proven beyond all doubt is also fallacious reasoning. So basically what this is saying is this fallacy is like making a claim, for example, the sky is green, and then making someone else prove that it's blue, or that it's, purple, maybe, or that, there's a sunset, so therefore it's red. You're making someone else do all the effort to disprove a claim, and you're saying that until that claim has been disproven, it's correct. And it also mentions at the bottom of this text that we also can't do it the other way around. For example, you might say the sky is blue, to which I would say, yes, but have you taken a picture of the sky, gone up, into the atmosphere, and collected a sample of the air up there, come back down, and shown to me that it is blue? If you don't, I won't believe that the sky is blue. which simply put, the reason why the sky is blue is because of blah, 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 blah. You get it. Obviously, if you go up into the atmosphere, you're not going to pull down blue air. The air is not any bluer, I don't think, up in the atmosphere than it is down on Earth. But that's basically the idea of the burden of proof, is if you make a claim, it's not up to someone else to disprove it. It is up to you to prove it. And similarly, if you don't believe a claim, it's not up to someone else to prove it, it's up to you to disprove it. Basically, you have to support your opinions. Next up is ambiguity. You used a double meaning or ambiguity of language to mislead or misrepresent the truth. Politicians are often guilty of using ambiguity to mislead and will later point out how they were technically not outright lying if they come under scrutiny. The reason that this qualifies as a fallacy is because it is intrinsically misleading. So, what this is basically saying is that it's okay to be vague if you're not trying to use it to lie. Sometimes being vague is just a cause of life. If you say, "Oh yeah, I did stuff last week," you're not trying to hide. Well, I mean, if you're not trying to hide what you've been doing, then that's not a fallacy just because you said you did stuff. But, for example, if someone asked, "Hey, how's your day been? I heard you had a surgery. Are you okay?" And you said, "Yes, I did have a surgery. I'm fine." Even though there might have been complications, but you're saying there was a surgery and my day has been good. You've been intentionally vague to hide the fact that there were maybe some issues there. Or, for example, you might say, if your boss comes in and asks you about a piece of work you're doing, and you're done with a certain aspect of it, or almost done with a certain aspect of it, and they say, "Hey, are you almost done with this thing?" And you say, "Yes, I'm working on it right now. I'm almost done with this." You're being intentionally vague by stating that you're almost done with something about the work, but not stating what part of the work it is, even if perhaps you just began the rest of it. Another way you can look at this is the fallacy of double meanings. For example, I forget who said it, but some famous person said that every law can be broken by the right person. And there is the law of gravity, therefore the right person can break the law of gravity and not, suffer the effects of gravity at all, which is inherently incorrect because of the fact that the law of gravity isn't a man-made law. It's a natural law, which is different from the man-made laws that were being spoken about in the first quote. So, next up, we have the gambler's fallacy. You said that runs occurred statistically and... My apologies. You said that runs occurred to statistically independent phenomena, such as roulette wheel spins. This commonly believed fallacy can be said to have helped create an entire city in the desert of Nevada, USA. Though the overall odds of a big run happening may be low, each spin of the wheel is itself entirely independent from the last. So while there may be a very small chance that heads will come up 20 times in a row if you flip a coin, the chances of heads coming up on each individual flip remain 50-50 and aren't influenced by what happened before. So this kind of theory can go into things such as winning streaks. You might say, "Oh, well, this person won 5 times in a row, therefore they're going to win again, because they already won 5 times in a row." you also might say that, they won 5 times in a row, and eventually they have to fail. So this time, they're definitely going to fail. Or, they won 5 times, and then they won a 6th time, and a 7th, and an 8th, and each time it's getting more and more likely they're going to lose. Except it's a random 50-50 chance. There's no more likeliness they're going to lose. Is it statistically improbable that they're going to get 100 wins in a row? Sure. But it's not statistically improbable that they're going to win one more round because it's just one more round. It's a 50-50 chance. Alright, the next one we've got here is the bandwagon fallacy. You appeal to popularity or the fact that many people do something as an attempted form of validation. The flaw in this argument is that the popularity of an idea has absolutely no bearing on its validity. If it did, then the earth would have made itself flat for most of history to accommodate this popular belief. So basically this is the, if all your friends jumped off a ledge, would you? It's saying, well, all of the people are buying this gum because it's the best gum. Therefore, you should get it too. Or, any number of other things. Many advertisements do it. They make it seem like their argument is sound because they're popular, or everyone's doing it, so therefore you should too. So, that is that. Moving on to a somewhat similar fallacy, the appeal to authority, where, as you might expect, instead of appealing to one large mass of people, you're referring to one specific powerful person. In this example, you said that because an authority thinks something, it therefore must be true. Now, it is important to note that this fallacy should not be used to dismiss the claim of experts or scientists' consensus. Appeals to authority are not valid arguments, but nor is it reasonable to disregard the claims of experts who have a demonstrated depth of knowledge unless one has a similar level of understanding and or access to empirical evidence. However, it is entirely possible that the opinion of a person or institution of authority is wrong. Therefore, the authority that such a person or institution holds does not have any intrinsic bearing upon whether their claims are true or not. Basically, this fallacy comes into question with two different things that I've heard of. The first one is, if a scientist says it, therefore it must be true. Which, as mentioned, this sometimes is the case. If a scientist has been researching this for years, they probably have a good idea of what it's about. If a scientist says that radiation is dangerous, it's probably dangerous. But just because someone says it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. We've thought plenty of things in the past that have been proven otherwise, especially in recent times. And with our understanding always changing, that means that we must have been wrong at some point. So, therefore, it is not okay to simply say, oh, well, the scientists claim it's true, therefore that's an appeal to authority, therefore they're false. But it's also not okay to say, a scientist said it's true at one point, and therefore it's definitely true. This is part of why it's really important to have up-to-date citations and sources when writing papers or when making arguments, because something from 1970 will likely have less true or accurate or up-to-date information than something that was released last year or in the current year. Now, there's another version of this that I've heard of, which essentially is something that you've seen a lot in any celebrity advertisement, which is the appeal to authority is someone entirely unequipped to have this authority. For example, you might say that because the president uses Axe body wash, therefore Axe body wash is the best body wash to use. Or you might say that a historian said that radiation baths are good for the skin, and you should absolutely paint your teeth with radioactive paint because it'll give your teeth a nice shine to it. Why another historian would say that, I don't know, but the problem with it is that they're not a professional in the field of radiation. They're a professional in the field of history. And if it's not history about radiation, then they have no knowledge on the subject, and therefore they're not equipped to say those things with any actual authority. Next up, we have the fallacy of composition or division. You assume that one part of something has to be applied to all, or other parts of it, or that the whole must apply to all of its parts. Often, when something is true for the part, it does also apply to the whole, or vice versa. But the crucial difference is whether there exists good evidence to show that is the case. Because we observe consistencies in things, our thinking can become biased, so that we presume consistency to exist where it does not. A good example of this could be seen in sports, where you say, this team has a star player on it, therefore that's a star team. You're saying that because one player is good, every other player is good, which, while it's possible that they picked really good team members for everyone on the team. It's equally possible that a few of the team members kinda stink. Next up, we have no true Scotsman. You made what could be called an appeal to purity as a way to dismiss relevant criticisms or flaws of your argument. In this form of faulty reasoning, one's belief is rendered unfalsifiable because no matter how compelling the evidence is, one simply shifts the goalposts so that it wouldn't apply to a supposedly true example. This kind of post-rationalization is a way of avoiding valid criticisms of one's argument. So this is a bit like special pleading in that sense. The example on the page, however, says this. Angus declares that Scotsmen do not put sugar in their porridge. So the claim is that no Scotsman will put sugar in their porridge. To which Lachlan points out that he's a Scotsman and puts sugar on his porridge. Furious, like a true Scot, Angus yells that no true Scotsman puts sugar in his porridge. So basically what this is saying is that you say a statement, such as, for example, no one would do this. Someone else comes along and say, but I would do that. And you would say, no true person, no good person, no logical person would do this. So, you might say, no gardener would ever plant all of their crops in one spot. Every gardener plants their corn in one place, their tomatoes in another, and so on. To which someone else might come along and say, actually, I do my plants as a gardener. I put my plants all mixed in with each other as a more renewable and a more sound way of gardening. While they may have reasoning for this, and in fact, it's a pretty cool technique, mixing all of your crops together to basically make it so that there's always some nice, good plant nutrients in your ground, and it doesn't get all used up. Check it out. You would say that no true gardener would do that. No rational gardener would do that because that's just not how it's done. It's an appeal to purity, as mentioned. It's saying that you can't possibly be good at this, therefore, only the good people do it this way. The true people do it this way. Therefore, your argument is invalid. Gosh, I hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. I am genuinely having such a good time right now. I absolutely adore logical fallacies, and I'm pretty sure you can probably hear it in my voice. I feel like I keep getting more and more energetic, and I should be trying to get you to sleep. I'll see if I can calm down. Alright, next up is the genetic fallacy. You judge something as either good or bad on the basis of where it comes from or from whom it came. This fallacy avoids the argument by shifting focus onto something or someone's origins. It's similar to an ad hominem fallacy in that it leverages existing negative perceptions to make someone's arguments look bad, without actually presenting a case for why the argument itself lacks merit. So, for example, let's say that two people are having an argument. The first one says something akin to, we shouldn't try to grow plants in our bathtubs because they'll get clogged up, we can't use our bathtubs. It's a better idea to just put it in a pot. And the second person says, but your mom used to do that. Your mom used to put plants in bathtubs all the time, so who are you to say it's a bad idea? Or, they might say, your mom wasn't a gardener, and your dad wasn't a gardener. Therefore, who are you to say what's good for gardening or not? Another thing might be talking about, say you have a work meeting, and they're discussing what could be best for work, and you suggest that incorporating more sick days for the workers could be a good idea, or more vacation days, so that way they can take time off when they need it, and they're not afraid to use it. And one of your coworkers says, didn't both of your parents get fired from their last jobs? Who are you to tell us what's good for business? It's not stating why your argument's wrong. It's stating an arbitrary reason, what your parents did, for why your opinion and you should be discredited. Next up. Oh, are they side-by-side? They're not. Oh, I'm shocked. Wow. Okay, sorry. There's two that are basically like inverses of each other. The first one we'll be discussing is black or white. You presented two alternative states as the only possibilities, when in fact more possibilities exist. Also known as the false dilemma, this insidious tactic has the appearance of forming a logical argument, but under closer scrutiny it becomes evident that there are more possibilities than the either-or choice that is presented. Binary black or white thinking doesn't allow for the many different variables, conditions, and contexts in which there would exist more than just the two possibilities put forth. It frames the argument misleadingly and obscures rational, honest debate. While there are plenty of different arguments that I could pull from to give an example for this, I will go ahead and say something that I've heard quite commonly is you like vanilla ice cream or you like chocolate ice cream. This completely removes from the equation strawberry ice cream, chocolate chip ice cream, cookie dough ice cream, birthday cake ice cream, peanut butter ice cream, peanut butter cookie dough ice cream, red velvet ice cream, sherbet, any number of fruit flavored ice creams. Dude, raspberry ice cream used to be my favorite. Oh, but that's beside the point. Basically, you're saying it's this or this. And It's not allowing anything outside of those two or anything in between them. So for another kind of concept, you might say something is 1 or something is 4. The answer to a question is 1 or it's 4. When in actuality, the answer could be 2, 3, 0, 5, 7, -5, 9, 153, and so on. You simply said something was either this or that, and you completely removed everything else. And like with this argument's name, black or white, it removes all shades of gray, which means you have to pick a side. And you can't be anything in the middle, or else you're simply the opposite side. For example, someone says, I like vanilla ice cream. You either like vanilla ice cream or you're not my friend because you're a chocolate lover. Someone comes along and says, I like strawberry ice cream. The first person says, well, then you're not my friend because you don't like vanilla ice cream and you're one of those chocolate stands. The person doesn't like chocolate, they like strawberry. But it's being framed as you against me or us against them. We'll get back to that same kind of concept in a little bit, but for now we have to get to begging the question. You presented a circular argument in which the conclusion was included in the premise. This logically incoherent argument often arises in situations where people have an assumption that's very ingrained, and therefore taken in their minds as a given. Circular reasoning is bad, mostly because it's not very good. There you go, that is circular reasoning right there, actually. Basically, for example, you might say that I'm very smart. And the reason for this, or perhaps I'm very smart, and I wrote a book about being how to be very smart, like me, because in the book I write that I'm very smart. Therefore, I'm very smart. You also might say, like, well, this cake is bad because it's not good. What makes it not bad? Is it just personal preference? The problem is that it keeps going in a circle. That is why it's called circular thinking. And that's begging the question. Basically, begging the question is you don't give a reason why. You simply say, this is because it is. Next up, surprisingly, is appeal to nature. You argue that something is natural and therefore it is valid, justified, inevitable, good, or ideal. Many natural things are also considered good, and this can bias our thinking. But naturalness itself doesn't make something good or bad. For instance, murder could be seen as very natural, but that doesn't mean it's good or justifiable. So, a inverse of this, as I'm sure someone has probably seen, is why medicine is bad, because we have immune systems. They can fight it off themselves. Therefore, medicine is bad because it's not just letting our immune systems work. It is chemicals. Even though those chemicals are also taken from nature, they're transformed into something different. Or you could say that poison ivy is a naturally occurring plant. Therefore, we should have no problem with it, because carrots are good, corn is good, rosemary is so good, basil is good, and therefore poison ivy is also good because it's also natural. Next up, and one that I fall into all the time, I think I even fell into it during this video, is the anecdotal fallacy. You used a personal experience or an isolated example instead of a sound argument or compelling evidence. It's often much easier for people to believe someone's testimony as opposed to understanding complex data and variation across continuum. Quantitative scientific measures are almost always more accurate than personal perceptions and experiences. But our inclination is to believe that which is tangible to us and or the world of someone we trust over a more abstract statistical reality. So, for example, I could bring up an anecdotal fallacy by telling you about how a couple days ago I was on my way home from work and I stopped by a park because I wanted to have some dinner. And I didn't want to just eat at home like I always eat at home. I wanted to actually do something. So I went to this park, and while I was there, this guy came up to me with like these really sharp fangs and these blood red eyes and super pale skin. And he drank my blood from my shoulder. And basically what I'm trying to get at here is that like vampires exist. Because I met one at the park while I was trying to have my food a couple days ago. And that is an anecdotal fallacy, because rather than presenting actual genuine information or actual genuine data, I simply told you about the time that I totally met a vampire, guys. It's totally real, and I didn't make that up just now. Therefore, it's gotta be true. So I do believe we're almost done, which is very sad because I really love fallacies. It's ridiculous how much I love these things. But yeah, we're almost at the end. But second to last, I believe, is the Texas sharpshooter. You cherry-picked a data cluster to suit your argument, or find a pattern to fit a presumption. This false cause fallacy is coined after a marksman shooting randomly at barns and then painting bullseye targets on the spot where the most bullet holes appear, making it appear as if he's a really good shot. Clusters naturally appear by chance, but don't necessarily indicate that there's a causal relationship. So, something that this is similar to is when you take data, say you ask 1,000 people, which is better, red or blue? And 9 of them say red, and all the rest, is it 991, I guess, say blue. And then you take those 1,000, and you take 1 person from the blue group, 9 people from the red group, and you say, look, out of these 10 people, 9 of them said that red was better than blue, and only 1 said blue is better than red. Therefore, red is better than blue. Technically, yes, 9 out of 10 people in that specific category said something that, red was better than blue. But if you look at the bigger picture, it says that blue is better than red. Another way of looking at this in theory is if you're writing a research paper, and you say that, your research paper is going to be talking about how dogs are the superior companion to humans than cats. You would only look up information talking about how dogs are better than cats, completely ignoring information that says cats are better than dogs, or maybe birds are better than dogs and cats both. You would only look at stuff that supports your argument, therefore making your argument seem more valid. What I'm getting at here is that it's really important, if you're going to be writing anything, if you're going to be arguing anything, to have as few fallacies as possible. And before I continue my thoughts on that, I'm going to go ahead and finish with the last one, which is bringing back that thought of black and white. So, we're going to take that idea of black and white, this or that, come over to middle ground. You claim that compromise or middle point between two extremes must be the truth. Most of the time, the truth does indeed lie between two extreme points, but this can bias our thinking. Sometimes a thing is simply untrue, and a compromise of it is also untrue. Halfway between a truth and a lie is still a lie. So, an example of this might be if I were to say, the sky is yellow, and you were to say, the sky is blue. Someone else might come along and say, well, maybe the sky is green then. It's a little bit yellow and a little bit blue, so it'll be green. It's not green, and it's not yellow. It's blue. So, despite the fact that we've had a compromise between our two lines of thought, that doesn't mean the compromise is correct. Now, that being said, like mentioned in the text, it is important to know that a lot of the time the truth is found in a middle ground of some form. Or you might say that an argument can be decided as compromises. Compromises are essentially a middle ground. I get a bit of this, you get a bit of that. If I want the entire donut packet and you want the entire donut packet, then we can split it. We don't necessarily have to say that just because it's a middle ground, it means that it's wrong. That goes back to the fallacy we talked about earlier. Just because the fallacy could be the middle ground fallacy of, well, if I want this whole thing and you want this whole thing, we should clearly split it. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's wrong. All of these fallacies, if done with logical thinking and the desire not to mislead intentionally with that logical thinking, tend not to be fallacies. For example, think of slippery slope. With slippery slope, the whole idea is that you're intentionally misleading someone or intentionally providing a sort of scare by bringing something from point A to point Z and saying this will happen without providing any evidence. But if you were to say, well, this, if we let this happen, then science and history and statistics show that this will happen, then it's not a slippery slope necessarily. All this to say, fallacies are not necessarily a bad thing. They're simply not necessarily a helpful thing most of the time. They don't provide good access to an argument, which is the problem if you want to come to a conclusion on something out of reason and logic. Fallacies, by design, tend to shut down conversation because they put someone else on the defensive, they irrationalize someone's way of thinking, and so on. That being said, sometimes fallacies have places. For example, if you're trying to get someone to quickly make a decision about something, it's okay sometimes to incorporate, say, an appeal to emotion. If you need someone to make a quick decision, you might say, quick, A or B. If you don't choose, I won't do either. For example, you might, if you're working on getting dinner for your friends and you might say, guys, are we doing Domino's or are we doing Pizza Hut? Yeah. Are we doing Domino's or are we doing Pizza Hut? If you don't decide, I'm getting none of us anything and we'll all starve. That will get people to make up their minds faster, in theory. It might cause them to freeze with fear of making the wrong decision, but usually they'll just say, this is what I want. And you can decide from there. The people who are less set in their thoughts will be more likely to shift to the other side. So if two of your friends say Papa John's, Pizza Hut, and two say Domino's, but one goes, I'd be fine with Pizza Hut, that's fine, then you can just say, well, there we go, we decided. Fallacies aren't always bad, and fallacies can also be used in really effective ways to bring people to your side of an argument or get them to see things your way. The problem is that if a fallacy is understood, it makes you lose credibility. For example, if you state that, you deserve a job and someone else doesn't because their parents were terrible with money, or perhaps their brother was terrible with money, and they are, of course, their brother's sibling. If the person you're trying to get to hire you realizes that that is a fallacy, they will automatically not think you as credible as if you were to bring up a good point for why you should be chosen over someone else. For example, you have more skills. Or if you don't have a reason, then simply stating what reasoning you have to be hired, even if it's not over someone else, can make you feel more credible than if you use fallacies to make yourself seem more desirable. So that's the big thing with fallacies. That's the big reason why they're scary to use, is that they can make you less credible. And when faced with genuine logic and reasoning, they often don't hold up very well. The one problem with this is, of course, people like emotions. And it's very scary going up against emotional fallacies, because similar to the idea of personal incredulity, people don't like being told that they're wrong, and if they don't think they can understand something, they'll just deny it. So, for example, if someone says, don't do this, your children will be eaten by monsters, and you say, no, it's fine to do this, your children won't be eaten by monsters, here's the facts. People will likely still be scared that their children will be eaten by monsters because they were hit with an emotional appeal. So, yeah, that is fallacies in a nutshell. There's, I'm sure, different fallacies. I'm sure that there are other ones aside from just those. And I'm pretty sure that there's more examples and more ways of using those fallacies than just the ones I presented to you. Again, all the information I got for all of these fallacies was found at yourlogicalfallacies.com. If you're interested in checking it out, feel free to go and check it out. If I remember, it'll also be in the description. You can also find other fallacies online and other lists of fallacies online. And here's a fun little factoid. If you're looking for fallacies, you can go onto Wikipedia, and that is a perfectly fine source to use if you're looking for decent information. And you might be wondering, why? Because all of your professors told you, don't go onto Wikipedia to find information, because it's not trustworthy. And to that I say, that is an appeal to authority. That is a fallacy. Because a lot of the time, Wikipedia is actually really well kept up with. And you'll probably notice if something isn't cited, because there will be something saying, citation needed. And if there is proof of something, it'll have a citation for it. Moreover, if you need to find citations, you need to find sources, Wikipedia is a great place to find it, because you can find those sources and use those primary sources, despite the fact that Wikipedia is a secondary source, taking all the information from the primary sources and putting it into one spot to access. Can you tell I've been doing a lot of writing recently? So anyways, that's all I have for you. This video is over an hour long, and all I did was talk about fallacies, and frankly, I could not have enjoyed myself more. I really, 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 really love fallacies. They're one of my favorite things. I don't know why. I just like figuring out why things work. and why we believe things, and why aspects of argument are really weird. So yeah, if you want to hear me talk about more of this kind of stuff, oh my gosh, I have so much I can talk about. I can talk about the aspects of an argument, such as claims or warrants or supports and all of that, and how that all flows together. If you're interested, I can also talk about the aspects of good writing, even though I'm not really an expert on that, so I couldn't probably give you too much information. But I could probably give you some help. That is my cue to go to bed. But yeah, if you want to hear more about the aspects of argument, I can probably find something to talk about. It might not be as long as this, but I can probably find something. And of course, if you want me to talk more about fallacies, I mean, I can do that too. I could come up with an entire list of fallacies and just read them out, if that's something that you enjoy. So yeah, if you feel strongly about this and you're awake, please feel free to let me know about that. If you don't feel strongly about it, or you're not awake, first off, no worries. I'm not that bothered. If you don't feel like leaving me some sort of message with all of your opinions on it, I'm not going to be upset. I don't mind at all. And second off, if you're asleep, good night, sleep well. Also, while I'm talking about it, I do want to say, I do read the messages that people send. I feel really bad because I'm really socially anxious and I don't know how to respond to them. So all I do is give them a little thumbs up, and sometimes I heart them. But then I never respond because I'm always worried that someone's gonna think that they're getting special treatment, or someone else is getting special treatment. I'm gonna be like, dang, I really wish that you respond to me. But I just responded to one person because they said something that I thought was funny. So I wanted to be like, that's really funny. And someone else said something that I didn't think was funny or didn't understand the joke, and I just don't respond. So I just don't respond to anybody because I don't want you guys to think that I'm ignoring some of you. I'm not. I just don't have anything interesting to say. I'm a really boring person. But anyways, I'm gonna go before something happens in the house and it gets really loud again, because this is a really loud house. The AC is loud, and also it connects directly to my room. It is right beside my room, so it's loud. And the dogs are probably gonna start barking or something, so I'm gonna go. I'll see you later. I really hope you enjoyed this. And if you did, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, I'm so happy. I'm so glad. And I'll catch you